Hi guys, so I've gone with a bit of a different approach today. I'm not sure if it's going to work or not, but we'll soon find out. I'm actually sitting in the back of the car to try out a little idea. See if we can make it a little bit better. That's slightly better. So yeah, this is part two. Sorry it's taken so long to bring it to you. After part one, I realised there was a fair few bits and bobs missing, so I've gone through it a bit more and added loads of stuff in I'd actually missed out entirely. Classic me. And yeah, coming to you with part two. I hope the isolation's not been treating you too badly, and hope you enjoy this instalment. So obviously last time I did purchase day, and now I'm going to do the day it arrived. So as you can see, the top photo there is of it on the trailer, and then the lower half is a very nice picture I took because it just looked quite authentically African, I think. So on the way home, it was taken to a friend in Nottingham who had a trailer. From there it went to Silverstone Race Circuit on the way home because he had a job to do there on the way. And then it also went through an actual little village called Rhodesia in the UK, which I didn't even know existed till I saw the photo. I'll add that on a Instagram post along with the link to this. Try to. But yeah, it was quite a nice day. I'd spent 7 days waiting from the day I bought it to this day, and yeah, I'm quite happy that quite happy to have got it at this point. So let's move on to the next bit, and this was basically the first thing I got on with. There we go. So the first thing you can probably see here is there isn't anywhere to dry store the car. That's because at the time it wasn't even built. I'd done this typical very bad thing and bought a car that needed to ideally be somewhere dry and secure, and I had neither to give it. So at this point, the garden had been cleared up so that I could basically make plans to erect something and build something for it to go in. So at this point, it is just pure mud it's sitting on. Now obviously, the only issue this creates is that you can't exactly jack it up because you haven't got a firm surface to do it on, and you can't even put it on stand because again you've got no solid surface for it to sit on. So, and you can't start taking anything off it because then it's open to elements. So consequently at this point I was a little bit sort of what can I do? So I went with the only thing really that is actually freestanding in the car itself. It has 4 cylinders and it's in the back in this case. I'll let you guess. So the first issue I'd noticed, and this was on from the day I purchased it, if I bring it a bit closer for you, the distributor on the left, which hasn't got a cap on it, was the one originally for the engine. Now no matter what I did, I could not find parts for that thing anywhere. There was no way of attaching the cap that I could fathom out, and obviously you need a cap to get anywhere with it at all. The numbers on it didn't match up whatsoever with any part number in a Renault 10 parts catalogue, and consequently I was actually thinking, has someone dropped a RAM distributor in this engine from somewhere else? Wasn't entirely sure. Anyway, I took it out and the drive was quite handily and predictably the same as the drive you'd get on a say a Mark 1.5 distributor, and that is funny enough the same distributor drive that goes all the way through to the 90s on the 5 Campers Primas. So what I did was I went on eBay, had a look at a later distributor, and the one I've got in my hand in the right picture is actually out of a Renault 19 1.4, but if I go in a bit closer you might be able to see a little nut that is just there. Now that nut is actually a pretty awesome bit of kit, if I'm honest, or if I'm being sad it's a bit of an awesome bit of kit. It makes it easier to adjust the dwell angle on the points, which obviously I'd be keeping because I'm me. Basically it allows you to adjust it with the engine running, so instead of taking the cap off, switching it off, adjusting it, try it again, you just sit there with it running, you adjust the nut, make it exactly as it's supposed to be, and then you take the cap back off, you tighten the adjuster down, job done. And consequently, I thought, well, oh, there you go, that's an easy way to do it anyway then. So yeah, drop that in it. And of course, if you've seen videos on YouTube about the very first time it ever run, I sprayed a bit of brake cleaner down the centre of the carburettor, and it did try and start. So from this point on, I thought to myself, well, why not see if I can actually get the carburettor to play ball? And there was two setups in the front of the car, and when I tried spraying a bit of brake cleaner down it, my friend said to me, "Ah, that's a nice Road 12 carburettor you've got there." And I said, why would there be a Road 12 carburettor in the front of a Renault 10 that's not even got the right engine orientation? And at that point we realised this wasn't actually the original engine. It was a Road 12 one, which was identified with the plate you can see just there that says 810 on it, which signifies it's a 1289cc. So this was sort of the dropping point really for us realising that, this isn't the engine we thought it was. So one of them things, obviously I'm a 5 anorak, but show me a different car, and although I'll recognise bits and bobs, I won't be able to tell you the ins and outs of it, which is a little bit annoying in some ways, but it's always time for a learning curve, and I was quite prepared for that. So yeah, that distributor is actually off a Road 12, because obviously it's a Road 12 engine, so it fully adds up now why nothing adds up with the Road 10 parts catalogue. Logic. So, and it also adds up as to why I couldn't find any bits for it looking it up on the Renault 10. So, but never mind. On that distributor I did get it to fire, and after I'd worked out what carburettor to try and use, move to the next bit, there we go. So the picture on the right hand side there is the carburettor main jet, and something to do with experience and having pulled enough carburettors to part by now, I just kind of predict that as soon as you try and get a carburettor that's never been touched for a long time to work, that some jet inside it is going to be blocked up, and predictably, yes, it was. So obviously, no matter how much fuel pressure you put to that carburettor, you're never going to get much play out of it, because you're just not going to get any fuel flowing through it where it's supposed to be. So consequently, took it into work, blew it all out with the airline, bit of carburettor cleaner, and the photo on the left was where I tried it with brake cleaner. But as soon as I got the carburettor cleaned out, I used a expansion bottle from a Mark II 5 that hangs up, rinsed it out, cleaned it all out, made sure it was all dry, filled it with petrol, and then gravity fed the carburettor with that, so I could basically try and run it normally in a way that obviously it would normally run on a carburettor with all the control levers and stuff on there. So if I could get it to idle, brilliant. And yeah, I did at this point try to get the fuel pump and all that malarkey to work, but no matter how much I tried, yeah, the pump was not playing ball. So yeah, that's what ended up on gravity feed. There is actually photos on the Instagram page of me taking the pump apart. I'll try and add one of those to it as well, so you got a nice, fresh, easy to find version of it. But yeah, that's how much work I put into it at this stage. This was a day where things started to change a bit. So I think this was the top photo there was September the 17th, and to think that I got the car on the 21st of July. So at this point it had been sitting around for about 2 months, not being able to do anything on it bar look at the engine and try and get that to run. The idea behind getting that to run was, when this base was done, I could drive it on and off the garden, which would be easier obviously than pushing it and relying on the starter motor and the battery. So yeah. So the top photo there is, if I zoom, there we are, that's a better photo. The Mark 15 is also sitting there because I had the week off and I was using the Mark 15. Why not? Love driving that thing. Base is just at the front of the car, about there. So yep, a week after the base was done, I then put the car on. They said about 2 to 3 days, but I thought, well, if I leave it a week and it starts to crack or anything, then we definitely know it's not my fault. I don't know anything about building, so you know, just take their advice and just add a bit more to it to be sure. Pardon me. So at this point, we obviously now have something hard standing, and it's now a case of what can I do. So I thought, well, the brakes are basically sitting ornaments anyway. They're absolutely pointless. They've got no use on the car at all at the minute because they're all city solid. So I thought, okay, we'll start taking all the brakes off. I can then start soaking them in fluid, get them stripped down, ready for rebuild. And classically, the front one there, as you can see, there is actually no caliper there at all. And as for the back one, well, yeah, it was present. It was just seized absolutely in place. I think the pads on the back caliper came off in 2 pieces after I'd managed to break them off with a screwdriver. So yeah, just gives you a bit of an idea of just how solid they really were. And yeah, so we see that was the first part of, oh, okay, we've got a parts list we can already start, which is, for starters, obviously all the perishables, so flexi hoses for the brakes and brake pads, stuff like that. The brake discs, when I measured them at a later date, the rear ones were just about in tolerance, the front ones were out of tolerance. Now, you probably can't see just how thin discs are at this point, but to give you a perspective, they I think come brand new at 5.5mm. They're just a solid disc, 5.5mm, and the tolerance is 4.5mm. So yeah, there's not much in it at all really, considering the fact that if you think about a modern brake disc that's probably about twice the thickness, after it's done say 10-20,000 miles, you'll be looking at this thinking, oh, okay, there's a little bit of digging there, but that'll be right. In this case, yeah, you haven't really got much tolerance for much dig where the pads are going to put their groove in it at all. So yeah, to say that back in the day when they had asbestos brake pads, I bet it was a bit cheaper to run. Because obviously asbestos was very good at doing its job, and it only disintegrated itself normally, apparently. Whereas nowadays the discs and the pads tend to wear down together, and you end up having to replace both at the same time, because where there's Kevlar and modern brake pads, it kind of eats away at the disc a lot more than it used to with the asbestos. So, but never mind. This was the first step. What bits we could do and what bits I could start getting on with. Move on to the next bit. So the other bit I could do was other brake components. This was a master cylinder. It's located at the front of the driver's footwell, underneath the car, obviously on a cross member. Now, the whole idea behind this project from day one, being a sort of quite a tight budget, especially after having bought the car and having to sort the garage and the base out, I kind of went on a mission of, I want to prove that you can restore a car without spending ridiculous amounts of money replacing absolutely everything for brand new parts. If I can find a way to repair things and recycle things, I want to do it. So consequently, as you can see there, I took it off on the top picture. I then took it into work, and in the morning before starting, I managed to strip it down to the point where I could basically get, there was a little spring clip in this front face here, and at the other end it was literally a union that both doubled up as holding on the three-way splitter that went off to the rear and the front brakes, and also the sensor itself for measuring how much pressure was in the system. Obviously if the pressure goes, light comes on. So, but took it all apart, as you can see in that photo, and after a good soaking, that there was a result. Now, first off, it doesn't actually look too bad, but sadly, I got myself one of these 2-leg honing tools that you put on a drill and run up and down like a yo-yo. It's basically exactly the same as you would do the cylinders inside an engine block. when you hone it and crisscross it so it's ready for a new set of rings and the pistons to go back in. Sadly, when I did this, the inside of it basically just kept collapsing, and it was almost as though you're inside a deep muddy hole and the sides just keep caving in. That was the best description I can give you for it. It just kept collapsing. So luckily, as it turned out, a new item was so cheap that it really wasn't worth putting much more effort into trying to repair it. It was, I did think myself, well, I could try and bore it out to 21mm, because there's two sizes, there's 19, there's 21mm, and I thought this is a 19, I could always try and bore it out to 21mm, but on the same score, it would be easier if you've got a lathe to stick it in there, perhaps, not sure, but yeah, otherwise it's going to take an awful lot of time and effort that could have been put in other parts of the car elsewhere. So consequently, I did opt for a brand new one, which in some ways I don't think was a bad idea, because obviously it means that you're not sort of tempting fate and hoping for the best. So obviously if you had to resize an entire piston shaft like that, you're probably going to be on a little bit of edge at times, thinking, is it working properly, or is more metal coming away? Obviously you would double check that and triple check it before you would even try and rebuild it, but still, obviously if it's taken a lot of work to get it to a point where you think it's safe, what's the promise it isn't going to start doing it again and start breaking away? But yeah, so yeah, that was one part that I did end up getting a new bit for. And another bit is this one just here. Now this is the rear pressure valve, and basically in the upright bit there you have a spring and ball bearing, and what happens is, from my understanding, is as the back end of the car faces G-forces going up and down, the ball will rise up and down and be sprung back into the closed position, which basically restricts the amount of pressure going to rear brakes. So should there be a lot of weight on the back of the car in the split second that you're braking, then it will basically increase the amount of pressure going to the back to slow that weight down effectively. Now, if this was a front engine car where there's no weight in the back of the car, then it would be quite vital to have some of that, because otherwise it would be quite likely that the back end of the car could spin when you apply heavy braking. On this occasion, being a rear engine car and having lots of weight at the back, it's okay to have normal amount of pressure going to it. So when I spoke to people on the forum about it, I was just basically told, back in the day everyone used to stick a T-piece in, mate, it's absolutely fine. And that's exactly what I did, and the MOT it went for absolutely okay. And on brake tests that I did prior to the MOT when I was driving it on the road, it was absolutely fine. The front end would lock up, the back end wouldn't. So, sorry, the front end would lock up before the rears did, and I've never had the back end spin. So from that perspective, it's absolutely perfectly fine, and I'm more than happy that it's safe. So if it wasn't, I wouldn't have left it like that. So yeah, going from experience and going from what people told me from their experience, a two-way T-piece absolutely fine on it. Up to next. Right, so this was where the garage started to be built up. Now the trouble I had here was the base was obviously done in September, and this was nearly a month later. Now the reason it took so long to start the garage was because I needed more than just myself for building it, and therefore I had to sort of arrange almost a building party. And it said in the instructions it should take 4 people a day. Well, it took 4 people to get sort of the skeleton of the structure up, and then it took me the following 4 evenings after work to actually complete it. So yeah, maybe I need a bit more than it said in the instructions, but never mind. We were getting there slowly but surely, and there we go. By that date, a week after starting it, it was a full solid garage, and I could finally start on things, I could finally start getting the car up in the air, taking bits off it, knowing that I had somewhere to store it, and not worry that, stuff's going to get ruined by rain, wind, or even nicked. So yeah, this was quite a nice turning point really, because it was finally a time that I could start getting my teeth, really getting the grit in my teeth, and if I start getting my hands dirty and getting on with it rather than watching it sit there like a lemon. Because yeah, that was kind of the first reason why I went for the engine, because it was what I could do and not feel like I wasn't getting anywhere. So yeah, I'm going to finish it off there, because from this point on things get a bit more intense. So I'll finish it off there, and hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully get another one up for you very soon, and take care of yourselves, stay safe. Till next time.